Hello. This lecture we're going to discuss social control theories, or what are also called social bond theories. This is chapter 7 in your textbook. We will start with Travis Hirschi, who is probably the most famous of the social bond or social control theorists, and his theory of the social bond. So, social control theories are different from other criminological theories that we've discussed. Most of the other theories focus on what pulls people or pushes people into committing crime. What are those characteristics? Social control theories flip this, and they focus on what keeps people from committing crimes. Okay, so when you under social control theory, what we have here is a different set of assumptions about the nature of human behavior. So social control theory focuses on what they call the lure of crime. What is it? What's to be gotten from this? What's the benefit of committing crime? So social control theorists assume that crime is tempting and that we are all at risk of being lured into crime. So, basic question, what about crime is tempting? What are the benefits of crime? So obviously money, revenge. There are a variety of reasons why people commit crimes, and take this glasses off, and why they expect to benefit from it. But if crime is so tempting, why doesn't everyone do it? That's the basic question of social control theory. So essentially what control theories focus on are two things. What keeps people from engaging in deviance, and what are some of the things that make us conform? Okay? I'm going to focus on these two aspects. What keeps people from engaging in deviance? What about their life keeps them from engaging in deviance? And what are some things that make us conform? Okay. So, Travis Hirschi, his book was published in 1969, and the book is titled Social Control. It's on social control. It's actually titled Causes of Delinquency. And Hirschi's idea is a theory of conformity. And it assumes basically that people are naturally deviant. This is completely different from the other perspectives we've talked about. Whereas we've thought about people as being basically good, but get into crime because they have to innovate, or they hang around with the wrong people. This theory starts with a basic assumption about human behavior, that is, that people are naturally deviant, and given the choice and given the opportunity, they're going to cheat, they're going to steal, they're going to engage in deviant behavior. So what is the source of conformity? Because 80% of us don't get involved in trouble, or never really get into trouble. So what is the source of conformity? Hirschi argues that it is the social bond. Okay, it is the social bond that is the source of conformity that keeps most of us from not acting on our deviant impulses. So what is the social bond? The social bond, it consists of 4 elements, and those are attachment, commitment, involvement, and belief. We're going to go through each one of these here. So let's start with attachment. Attachment is the extent to which you have strong bonds to others. Okay, so the stronger those bonds, the less likely someone is to deviate. Why? Well, what are we talking about? Bonds to others, bonds to family, bonds to friends, bonds to important people in your life, bonds to your job, bonds to your coach or a pastor or some important person, a teacher, some important person in your life. The stronger those bonds are with people, the less likely you are to deviate. Why? Well, because you've got a lot to lose. I love to tell this story. It's embarrassing. I got arrested when I was 15 for curfew violation. And my mom had to come down to the station and pick me up about midnight. Long ride home. The next day, she didn't really say much. Next day, she said, okay, get in the car. And I got in the car. She took me over to my grandmother's house. And I had to tell my saintly grandmother that, yes, last night I got arrested for breaking curfew. I can still, that was 1979, 1980, 79, 1979, summer of 79, I can still see the look of disappointment on her face. These bonds, you don't want to disappoint the important people in your life, the people you are attached to. It is that bond that keeps us from deviating. Okay? The second is commitment. And commitment basically refers to our investment in conventional lines of action. So our investment in having a good job, having a secure future, etc., raising our children correctly, living a normal life. The greater we are invested to conventional lines of action, the less likely we are to deviate. People who have high aspirations, I want to be very successful, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be a doctor, etc., they have low levels of deviance. Why? Because they have a lot to lose if they fall off of their commitment to conformity. Commitment to institutional means. We talked about this when we talked about the theory of, when we talked about innovators, and we talked about Merton's idea of social strain. So what are the institutional means? Commitment to education, legitimate jobs as the route to economic success in our society. All right. So what would be examples of commitment? Well, commitment to doing well in school, commitment to not getting in trouble while you're in school, not cheating on tests because you don't want that mark on your resume. Commitment to doing the right things, in other words. Next is involvement. So time spent in conforming conventional activities is inversely related to the probability of engaging in deviant behavior. You've heard this phrase from the Bible, idle hands are the devil's workshop. So people who are highly involved in routine activities or in conventional activities, they have less time to get in trouble, and they become more committed to conventional life. So I spent best part of my adult life. When I was a kid, I was involved in all kinds of sports. Played football and wrestling in high school. And before that, when I was in from about fourth grade all the way up to high school, I was involved in Little League, and I played Pop Warner football, and I played church basketball because I was terrible at basketball. I couldn't play in the city league, but I could play in the church league. And so I was always involved in something. So when I had my son, who is now a sophomore at Baylor, my wife and I were like, we got to keep this kid involved. So he played baseball and football and basketball and did taekwondo and was involved with youth group at church. And I'm sure you all have very similar stories. And it's this level of involvement that keeps you sort of according to Hirschi anyhow, it keeps you on the track of non-deviance, of not getting in trouble. Okay? So that's the third element of the social bond. The last element of the social bond is belief. And it basically is agreeing with societal norms. Now, go back to Merton. We talked about this idea of what are the cultural goals? Well, the goals that you want to have material success in your life, or you want to have a comfortable life. And then what are the institutional means to doing that? Working hard in school, working hard at your job, following the rules. Eventually you'll get there, right? So this is the sort of belief argument. People who hold these beliefs are less likely to get in trouble because they're not willing to deviate to get there. Most of us do hold these beliefs. Most of us accept the cultural goals and the means to get there. So, social bond is made up of 4 components: attachment plus commitment plus involvement plus belief. And most importantly about Hirschi's theory, the higher your social bond, the lower your deviance. Okay. So what we do is, his book was actually an extensive test of his theory. And it turns out that basically a couple of findings here. Attachment and commitment were the 2 most important predictors. So if you have attachment to people who are upstanding people in your life, whether it's coach or a minister or your parents. It doesn't have to be or, it can be and your parents, your professors, whatever. These are people you have strong attachments to. These are people important in your life. And the extent to which these are also good people, then attachment to these people means you have a much higher social bond. Commitment to conformity is also very strongly related to the social bond. Beliefs and involvement are important, but not nearly as important as commitment and attachment. Okay? So the higher your social bond, that means you're highly connected to a bunch of other people. A bunch of other people who you don't really want to disappoint. And this bond keeps you, goes back to the basic question, it keeps you from acting on that natural impulse to cheat, to lie, to steal when you have a chance. Okay? Now, Hirschi also finds that the social bonds, attachment and commitment, depend upon where you are in the life course. In other words, sort of what age or where you are in your life journey. So let's take a look here. So earlier in life, in your childhood and in your adolescence, attachment to family seems to matter quite a bit in terms of social bonding. In young adulthood, post-adolescence into your 20s and 30s, belief in conformity or commitment to a conformity is more important. In midlife, career goals, etc., clearly commitment to conformity is important then. And then later in life, when you get up to be my age and you're in your late 50s, 60s, and 70s, attachment to family is one of the things that really helps create the social bond. And again, keep in mind what I'm trying to say here is what keeps you from, what keeps you from taking the temptation to do bad things, to act deviant, and to commit crimes. It is your attachment to family, your commitment to conformity, and as these two attachments and commitments, the relative importance of each, while they're both important at different points in your lifetime, one will be more important than the other. When you get to be my age, it's your attachment to family that really matters. I do everything I do for my child and my family, and when you hit my age, you will as well. Okay, we're going to finish the section on Hirschi. The later in life, about 10 to 15 years after Hirschi's big book was published, he and a gentleman named Gottfredson wrote a second book, and it was supposed to be called The General Theory of Crime. That's the title of the book, actually. It was published in 1989, and essentially what Hirschi now argues in this later book is that they basically came up with the idea that we can explain all crime, and all crime is based on one factor, and that one factor is low self-control. So low self-control, or we come back to this point again over and over again, the inability to defer gratification. Okay? Low self-control or the inability to defer gratification is what leads to crime. So what is low self-control? It leads to other forms of deviant behavior, smoking, drinking, unwanted pregnancies, etc. And what causes low self-control? Well, let's blame it on your parents. They argue that low self-control is related to poor child-rearing practices. Parents don't teach their children the importance of delaying gratification. They will grow up with levels of low self-control and be much more likely to be involved in deviant activity, including criminal deviant activity and spend time in jail and all the other bad things. But what really is, they have low self-control. They can't defer gratification. You guys are deferring gratification because you're in college to get jobs, to get the money, to buy the stuff that you want. When you can't defer gratification, you immediately figure out a way, you innovate to go out and get the things that you want. And that's usually what that means is you have to do it in a deviant or criminal manner. All right, thank you.